I'll wait a few more moments for everyone to gather and seat themselves. And I think we're still, I don't see Dr. Littlefield on my view, so we certainly will need him.
I can see him.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Dr. Littlefield, there you are. You were behind a box on my screen. Okay, it looks to me like everyone is back in the room. Welcome back. Good afternoon. Let's go back on the record where we left off. We'd heard the oral summary of rebuttal testimony from Dr. Littlefield. And I believe at this time, I will look to either Mr. Bivens or Mr. O'Brien. Do you have questions for Dr. Littlefield?
Yes, we do, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Bivens.
First of all, good afternoon, Dr. Littlefield. It's nice to see you again.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bivens. Same, good to see you as well.
I'm going to use the phrase Buena Vista to refer to Buena Vista Water Storage District. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
All right. Ms. Mullen, if we could pull up Exhibit Buena Vista 900 and go to PDF page 6, please. And just if we could scroll down maybe one line, please. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. So let me direct your attention, Dr. Littlefield, to the first sentence of paragraph 13 on line 14 through 15. You've indicated that renting to tenant farmers was important to Miller and Lux's water use planning. Is that your testimony?
Yes, that's correct.
And you've not expressed an opinion as to how many of these tenants were located within the boundaries of Buena Vista's service area, right?
That's correct.
And you've not expressed an opinion as to how many acres of land were farmed by Miller and Lux's tenants within the boundaries of Buena Vista's service area, correct?
Do you mean cumulatively?
Yeah, let's say cumulatively prior to 1914.
I don't know how many acres cumulatively the tenant farmers occupied.
Okay. And you also have no opinion as to the amount of Kern River water provided to tenants located within the boundaries of Buena Vista's service area.
The historical record indicates that Miller and Lux provided them with water necessary for the tenant farmers to grow their crops, but it doesn't specify an amount or rate of flow.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I want to talk a little bit about your opinions about crop diversification next. So Ms. Mullen, if we could go to PDF page 9, please. Thank you. And we'll just focus here on paragraph 21. And in the first sentence, you've indicated that Miller and Lux used crop diversification as part of a strategy to maximize its water rights and uses as circumstances changed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Is that your opinion?
That's correct.
Okay. And in the last sentence of paragraph 21, you've identified corn grown within Buena Vista as an example of crop diversification, right?
Correct.
And just for the record, with respect to crop diversification, from what crops are you opining that Miller and Lux diversified?
Could you rephrase that, please?
Sure. Prior to Miller and Lux's efforts at crop diversification, what crop, in your opinion, were they primarily growing within Buena Vista?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the chronological period that you're interested in.
Prior to 1914.
I think the historical record shows that before 1914, one of the main crops that were being grown either by Miller or Lux or their tenant farmers was corn.
So it's your opinion that one of the main crops that Miller and Lux was growing in the Buena Vista service area prior to 1914 was corn.
Correct.
But you've indicated, or well, we just discussed that one of the examples of crop diversification that you've identified in this paragraph was Miller and Lux's raising of corn. Is that right?
Yes.
So what I'm trying to understand is when you refer to crop diversification, Dr. Littlefield, what crops, in your opinion, what crop or crops, in your opinion, was Miller and Lux diversifying away from?
Diversifying away from essentially grasses and alfalfa and other grains that were being used primarily to feed cattle.
And would you agree that prior to strike that. Let me move on. Let's pull up actually exhibit Buena Vista 914, please. And Dr. Littlefield, in your written rebuttal testimony, you've identified exhibit 914 as a 1919 study done by renowned water engineers Joseph B. Lippincott and Thomas H. Means, titled Report on the Miller and Lux Ranch Southern Division on Kern River, California in 1919. Is that right?
That's correct.
And if I refer to the land discussed in this report as the Miller and Lux Ranch, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Well, not completely. I mean, the Miller and Lux Ranch encompassed, I guess it sort of depends on what you mean by it. If you're referring to what is today the Buttonwillow service area, plus the lands north of Wasco Road that Miller and Lux owned, that's one possibility, but they also owned a number of other ranches in the general lower Kern River area in the southern San Joaquin Valley, and some historical documents referred to it all as the Miller and Lux Ranch. Others were more specific. So I think I need a more specific definition from you.
Sure. The lands in this report, right, are referred to as the Miller and Lux Ranch Southern Division, correct?
Yes.
And so if I refer to the lands that are being discussed in this 1919 report as the Miller and Lux Ranch, you'll understand that that's what I'm referring to.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, the Miller and Lux Ranch referred to in this exhibit is larger than what is now Buena Vista, correct?
That's correct.
And if we scroll to PDF page 112, please, Ms. Mullen. And perhaps we could just zoom in a little bit, please. Perfect, thank you. Dr. Littlefield, this report dated October 1919 is a part of the study your testimony refers to as Lippincott and Means?
That's correct.
Okay. And Ms. Mullen, if we could scroll to PDF page 136, please. And let's scroll down, please, so that we can see the paragraph entitled crops. That's great right there. And let me direct your attention, Dr. Littlefield, to the fourth sentence under the heading crops, which reads, Miller and Lux have confined their efforts to the production of feed for cattle, hogs, and sheep. Did I read that correctly?
Could you blow that up a little bit bigger? On my laptop screen, it's pretty small. Yes, I see that.
Okay. If we look at and I think this is going to be a little difficult given the formatting of this document, but I want to look at the last sentence that begins at the very bottom of page 136 and will continue to 137, which appears to read, It is believed that a continuation of this policy will prove most profitable for the present, especially if the ranch is to be operated in the future with one management. Did I read that right?
Yes, you did.
And Ms. Mullen, if we could scroll down a little further on page 137 to show the text under the heading alfalfa. Thank you. I think that, yes, perfect. And Dr. Littlefield, let me direct your attention to the, I believe it's the fourth sentence of this paragraph. And in that sentence, Means states that alfalfa is, quote, now produced in large quantities on the Button Willow Ranch. Is that right?
I'm trying to count down here. It's the fourth sentence you're looking for?
Yes.
I think if the sentence starts, it is now produced.
Correct.
Yes, I see the sentence.
All right. And then in the last full sentence on this page, Mr. Means also states that alfalfa has the disadvantage of requiring more water than many other crops and of requiring considerable labor for the making of hay. Is that right?
That's what the sentence says, correct.
Okay. Let's go to PDF page 139, please, Ms. Mullen. And let's scroll down a little further. And we should get, yes, there's corn. And let's just look at that first sentence there under the corn heading, Dr. Littlefield. Means states that corn is grown on the Button Willow Ranch, correct?
Very, very generally, that's what it's. The phrase is very generally grown around Bakersfield and on the Button Willow Ranch.
Do you have an understanding as to whether there was more corn than alfalfa grown on the Button Willow Ranch?
I have no idea.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, could we just scroll to the next page, please? So we're still, that's perfect, right there. I'm looking at the first full sentence at the top of this page, Dr. Littlefield, and Means states that corn has the advantage of being economical in water requirements, and the time of use for corn coincides with the flow of the river. Is that right?
Yes, that's what the sentence says.
Okay. Is it fair to interpret Means as saying that corn generally require less water than alfalfa?
I don't think he's comparing it necessarily to alfalfa. He just is commenting about water requirements of corn. I don't think he's comparing it to any other crop. He's just saying it's a generality.
Do you, as an historian, have an understanding as to whether corn generally requires less water than alfalfa?
I'm not an agricultural expert, and I don't know whether it does or not.
Okay, fair enough. Let's actually here, let me think about this. Are you aware of whether there are any crops grown, are you aware of whether there were any crops grown on the Miller and Lux Ranch as of October 1919 that used more water than alfalfa?
Again, I'm not an expert in crops or the amount of water they use, so I can't answer your question.
Fair enough. Ms. Mullen, can we go back to Exhibit Buena Vista 900, please? And Dr. Littlefield, I want to make sure I understand your opinion about the relationship between crop diversification and Miller and Lux's strategy to maximize its water rights here. you didn't quantify how Miller and Lux's crop diversification affected its use of Kern River water, right?
That's correct.
And there are no sources on which you relied that quantify how Miller and Lux's crop diversification affected its use of Kern River water, correct?
I'm sorry, you were kind of faint on the end of that sentence. I didn't hear it.
Sure. Let me try again. There are no documentary sources on which you relied that quantify how Miller and Lux's crop diversification affected its use of water, correct?
None that I rely on. That's correct.
And okay, thank you. Let's scroll down, please, Ms. Mullen, so that we can see paragraph 22. Perfect. And it looks like in paragraph 22, you've referred to a letter about corn production from James Ogden, dated October 21st, 1913, right?
That's correct.
And you've submitted that letter as Exhibit Buena Vista 905?
Yes, I did.
Ms. Mullen, can we pull that exhibit up, please? Buena Vista 905. And there's a heading, Ms. Mullen, I'd like to make sure we can see the whole thing. It's the button willow heading at the sort of at the top of the letter, but if we could scroll down so we can see that heading, that would be helpful. I'm sorry, the text that follows that heading, I should say. And yes, please, just a little further. That works for me right there. The last sentence under this button willow heading reads, "The cattle which we started feeding with green corn here have done very well indeed, and would have done better had not the frost damaged the corn." Is that right?
Yes, that's what the sentence says.
And let's go back, please, Ms. Mullen, to Buena Vista 900. If we go down to paragraph 23 of your testimony, which refers to, and let's scroll a little further, please, Ms. Mullen. It refers to a letter from, I believe it's John Thompson. And in that letter, you've quoted Mr. Thompson as saying that he made 4 trips to Buena Vista Lake to check the sacks of Egyptian corn threshed. Is that right?
Yes.
And isn't it true that Buena Vista Lake itself is not within the current Buena Vista service area?
That's correct.
Okay, and in either of the letters that we've just discussed, there is nothing that expressly indicates that the corn they were referring to was grown for a purpose other than livestock feed, right?
There's nothing. I don't know what is in the rest of the Thompson letter without taking a look at it, but the previous letter that you showed did say that the corn was for cattle feed.
Let's just so we can confirm my understanding of the Thompson letter. That's Buena Vista 906, right?
Yes.
And Ms. Mullen, could we pull that exhibit up, please? So, Dr. Littlefield, I'd like you to take a look through this letter, take the time that you need, and then I'd like to know whether there's any express indication that the Egyptian corn Mr. Thompson referenced was grown for a purpose other than livestock feed.
Ms. Mullen, could you scroll down to the next paragraph? Keep scrolling, please. Okay, and go back up to, I think it's the first or the second paragraph. Yeah, this particular letter doesn't indicate what the purpose of the Egyptian corn was for. It just says that Mr. Thompson went to look at the progress of the threshing of the corn, but it doesn't indicate what the corn was being used for.
Okay, thank you. We can take this exhibit down, Ms. Mullen. I'm going to move to another topic. I want to talk a little bit about groundwater and the Mendenhall reports. So just to be clear for the record, Dr. Littlefield, your written rebuttal testimony discusses 2 reports on groundwater prepared by W.C. Mendenhall, right?
That's correct.
And Ms. Mullen, actually, could we have exhibit Buena Vista 900 back up on the screen? And I'd like to look at PDF pages 20 and 21. Hopefully we can get the bottom of 20 and the top of 21 on the screen at roughly the same time, because I want to look at paragraph 47 in particular. I think we should be able to get that all on the page. Well, maybe not. All right, let's start with the beginning of paragraph 47. And I'm looking, let me direct your attention, Dr. Littlefield, to lines 25 and 26. Your opinion is that the 2 Mendenhall reports that are referenced in paragraph 47 establish that many wells existed in the area of today's BVWSD, Buttonwillow, and Maple service areas dating back as far as 1905. Do I have that right?
You do.
And then, Ms. Mullen, if we could scroll to the very top of the next page. And let me focus your attention again, Dr. Littlefield, on lines 3 through 4 of paragraph 21 on this page. It's also your opinion that Mendenhall's studies indicate that Miller and Lux integrated groundwater resources into the company's overall water management plan, right?
Yes, that's what it says.
And when you refer to the company's overall water management plan, are you referring to a specific document?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the general operation of how they were using wells simultaneously with surface flows as well as stored water at Buena Vista Lake Reservoir.
Thank you. Let's scroll up, please, Ms. Mullen, to PDF page 18. And I'd like to look at paragraphs 44 and 45. So just to make sure I understand your testimony here correctly, Dr. Littlefield, the 1916 Mendenhall report contains tables that provide information about wells in Kern County. Is that right?
In a general sense, yes, but also more specifically with regard to the Buena Vista Water Storage District service areas.
Sure. And of course, it doesn't specifically say anything about Buena Vista's service area in the 1916 Mendenhall report, right?
No, because the district didn't exist then.
Precisely. And then as stated in your paragraph 45, you determined that 4 wells listed on the table in Mendenhall's 1916 report were located within today's Buttonwillow service area and owned by Miller and Lux, correct?
Yes.
All right. And Ms. Mullen, let's scroll to the next page, please. And I want to ask Dr. Littlefield a few questions about the table that appears at the top. Perfect. And you've highlighted the 4 wells that you referred to in paragraph 45, correct?
Yes.
And the second well that you've highlighted is located in Township 29, Range 23 East, Section 13, correct?
It's pretty tiny on my screen, but if I squint very closely, yes, it looks that way.
Okay, and maybe Ms. Mullen, if you could briefly zoom in just so that we can make sure the record is clear.
Mr. Bivens, could you get closer to the mic or something? I at least have a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, let me see. Is that a little better, Mr. Becerra?
It's a little better. Yeah, thank you.
And
That's helpful to me too.
good. Glad to hear it. So, Dr. Littlefield, just to confirm for the record, that second well that you've highlighted this table indicates that it's located within Township 29 South, Range 23 East, and Section 13, correct?
That's correct.
And it was used for, it looks like irrigation, right?
Yeah, it has the capital letter I
Okay,
under the use of water column.
indeed. Let's pull up Exhibit Buena Vista 659, please, Ms. Mullen. And Dr. Littlefield, this is a map that shows Buena Vista's Button Willow service area, correct?
Yes.
And it also shows the township's ranges and sections on which the Button Willow service area is located, right?
Yes.
And are you able to locate Township 29 South, Range 23 East, Section 13 on this map?
I'm going to need it blown up quite a bit in order to do that. Okay, stop. That's good. Could we blow up, it looks like there's a, right in the middle there of the pink area, if you could blow that up a little bit more, please. Who has the handwritten number in the middle? Yeah, that one where your cursor is. Yes, I see that. Section 13, it looks like it's right along the edge of what is today Buena Vista Water Storage District. Right, it looks like it's the pink area cuts through the southwest section of corner of Section 13.
Yes, and so the Button Willow service area runs through only a portion of Section 13, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if we turn back to the table on PDF page 19 of Buena Vista 900. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. It's possible that the second highlighted well was not located in the Button Willow service area, right?
It's possible, but I'm pretty sure I double checked this against other maps that show the township range in sections, and I believe the well was in that southwest corner. It's possible that it was not, but in any case, it was very close to what is today the Buena Vista Water Storage District.
So you're, just to be clear, you're not entirely sure that that second well that you highlighted was located within the Button Willow service area?
Not without comparing it to another map at this point. That's correct.
Okay. Of these 4 wells that you've highlighted, Dr. Littlefield, the table indicates that one of them was not used, right?
Yes.
Okay. That would be the fourth highlighted well.
That's correct.
So of the 3 wells that were used, only 1 was used for irrigation according to the table, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you a little different question. This was in your oral summary, and I understood you to say in connection with slide 7 of your oral summary, discussing Mendenhall's 1916 report, that 1916 report stated that the 4 wells that are identified here continued to be used by Miller and Lux in 1916. And I'd like to know whether Mendenhall actually, let me back up. The data in this table is from a report by someone named Fisk, right? Is it AJ Fisk?
I think the 1908 report says that Fisk was one of the parties that collected the data. I'm not sure if he was specifically responsible for this data or not, but the 1908 report says he was one of, I think it was 3 or 4 parties that collected the data that eventually wound up in this table.
Regardless, the data that's in this table was collected between 1905 and 1907, right?
Correct.
And my question for you, Dr. Littlefield, is did Mendenhall in his 1916 report confirm that the wells you've highlighted here were still being used in 1916?
No, he did not.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Let's go back to, actually, can we pull up Exhibit Buena Vista 919, please, Ms. Muller? And Dr. Littlefield, this is a close-up of a map of the San Joaquin Valley that was included with Mendenhall's 1916 report, right?
Yes.
And the larger blue square, well, actually, perhaps, oh, you know what? It's my Zoom box is in the way. Let me move my Zoom box just so I can see this. So there's 2 blue squares represented on Exhibit 919. And the larger blue square is intended to represent today's Button Willow service area, right?
Yeah, only in a very general sense. I didn't attempt to make it specific to the exact boundaries. I just wanted to highlight the general area.
Sure. And the same is true with the smaller box, except it refers to or it generally indicates the Maples service area.
Yes, generally that's correct.
Okay. Within the blue squares, there are a number of dots with numbers next to them, right?
Yes.
And the dots, just the dots represent, excuse me, the dots represent wells.
That's my understanding.
And then the black numbers represent, well, actually, what do the black numbers represent?
I don't remember. Is off the top of my head, I believe there was some sort of distinction explained either in the written report or perhaps in the caption to the overall map, but I don't remember the distinction right now between the red ones and the black ones.
Okay, fair enough. Do one of the dots either, do one of the numbers either red or black? Was one of them intended to represent information about groundwater quality in the area?
Mendenhall made it clear in his 1916 report that he was mostly addressing quality issues as far as wells and groundwater were concerned, and that had been the focus of his work between 1908 and 1916. but he was talking about the wells that that had been identified before his 1908 report, and he said that he had continued to do work, but most of what he described about the subsequent work leading up to 1916 related to quality.
So with respect to the numbers that are indicated on this map, Dr. Littlefield, do either of them refer to groundwater quality?
I don't know without seeing the caption or going back into the main report.
Okay, and that's fair. And maybe we can do that a little later. Just to be clear, you're not offering any opinions about the quality of groundwater as of the date of this report within Buena Vista's service area, correct?
That's correct. I am not offering that opinion.
Okay, and of the wells that are identified by dots in these squares, did you determine conclusively that all of them are located within Buena Vista's current boundaries?
I did not. I intended only to show that they were in the approximate area of the what is today the Buena Vista Water Storage District.
Okay, so it's possible that some of the wells you've identified as being within these blue boxes were not within Buena Vista's current service area, correct?
That's correct. And conversely, the blue boxes could potentially be enlarged somewhat to, if we overlaid the district, in case I didn't quite get the boundaries correct. The purpose of the boxes is only to show the really general area, not to limit it to just the boundaries of the current district.
Fair enough. Your rebuttal testimony also doesn't indicate how many of these wells belong to Miller and Lux, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. And Ms. Mullen, I think I'm done with this exhibit. And I'd like to go back to Buena Vista 900, please. And I'd like to talk about Percy Clark, Dr. Littlefield.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Mullen, could we scroll to PDF page 30? And I'd like to look at paragraph 65, please. And Dr. Littlefield, in paragraph 65, you've written, to summarize how all this background fits into my original written testimony, the 1919 Lippincott Means Report was a proposal requested by a member of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company's Board of Directors, Percy H. Clark. The Kern Valley Reclamation Company, in turn, was in essence a subsidiary of Miller and Lux. Clark had asked for the study because Miller and Lux wanted a way to help end the title insurance litigation while providing water to Miller and Lux's acreage north of Wasco Road. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay. And if we scroll up to paragraph 58, which I think is on PDF page 25, Ms. Mullen. Very good. And you've characterized Percy Clark here as the owner of a major Los Angeles real estate development and marketing firm, right?
That's correct.
And you've cited, strike that, Exhibit Buena Vista 922. Does that provide what you'd consider to be reliable background on Mr. Clark?
It's the background that I was able to locate.
Okay, fair enough. Let's open up that exhibit Buena Vista 922, please, Ms. Mullen, and go to PDF page 2. Okay, very good. And I want to look, Ms. Mullen, at this is a little tough to do. Dr. Littlefield, let me direct your attention to the last sentence in the first column. And we'll look at that and the first sentence in the second column. Could you just read those two sentences and let me know when you finished?
You're talking about the sentence that starts in 1899, he resigned his Los Angeles position?
Correct, that sentence. And then on the next page, the one that begins with Mr. Clark is handled.
You're talking about the second column at the top?
Correct.
Could we scroll to the top of that page? Yes, I see that.
And that phrase handled or handle in this document, it refers to, at least the second sentence, 100,000 acres of property in the central and southern parts of the state. And my question for you, Dr. Littlefield, is what do you understand that term handle to mean in this context?
Well, when you look at the first sentence at the very top of the same page, where it identifies, says Clark Percy H., Real Estate and Investments, Los Angeles, California. To me, it means that he was a realtor, essentially, and he handled farming and ranching property primarily, and that as of the time this particular book was published, he had handled or marketed over 100,000 acres of that kind of real estate.
Okay, thanks for that. Ms. Mullen, could we open up Exhibit Buena Vista 914, please? Excuse me. Okay, thank you, Ms. Mullen. And could we scroll to PDF page 6, please? And Dr. Littlefield, I know this is a little hard to read on the screen, but this is the table of contents for the 1919 Lippincott Means Report, right?
It appears to be that, yes.
Okay, and Ms. Mullen, if we scroll in a hair, please, it's towards the top of the document. And then Dr. Littlefield, up towards the top, do you see that the table of contents identifies a preface that begins on page 4?
Yeah, I see that.
So Ms. Mullen, could we scroll to PDF page 10, please? And you see, Dr. Littlefield, that this page is identified as page 3 of the Lippincott Means Report.
Yes, Ms. Mullen, could you make it a little larger, please? It's pretty tiny on my laptop.
Can you see that?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Do you see the 3 in the upper right-hand corner?
Yes, I do.
And Ms. Mullen, could you scroll to the next page, please? And Dr. Littlefield, do you see this as page 5 of the Lippincott Means Report?
I do.
Is there any reason why you did not include page 4 in Exhibit Buena Vista 914?
No, I would have included it. It's possible that this kind of paper, when you're photographing it, is very, very thin, and it's possible it was clinging to the previous page. I really don't know. Dr. Miltenberger, I think, has reproduced the whole report. Perhaps he has page 4 in his copy.
Okay. And I thought that might be the case, Dr. Littlefield. So Dr. Miltenberger's copy, Ms. Mullen, is Exhibit KWBA 30. And if we could open that up, that would be great. So Dr. Littlefield, I'll represent that exhibit KWBA 30 contains the 1919 Lippincott means report that you produced as exhibit Buena Vista 914. But please let me know if you need to scroll through it to confirm that.
No, that's fine. I'll take your word for it. Looks like it on the screen here.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Mullen, could we go to PDF page 7, please? And then let's scroll down to the last paragraph. Oh, and I'm sorry, let me just clarify for the record. Dr. Littlefield, this is page 4 of the Lippincott means report, right?
Yeah, Ms. Mullen, could you just scroll it up a tiny bit more? Yes, it's page 4.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Mullen, let's scroll down to the last paragraph, please. So, Dr. Littlefield, I'm looking at the first 3 sentences of page 4 of the Lippincott means report, and they appear to read, Mr. Percy Clark is an owner of large ranch properties in this vicinity. He has been acquainted with the Buena Vista Valley for many years. The company with which he is associated is part owner with the Miller and Lux estate and the reservoir irrigation and reclamation projects mentioned below. Did I read that correctly?
You did?
Okay. And let's scroll up to PDF page 2, please, Ms. Mullen. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's scroll to PDF page page 4. My apologies. Okay, and let's stop right there. Dr. Littlefield, you see that the heading on this page indicates that we're looking at, quote, the Miller and Lux branch summary.
Yes.
And below that heading, it identifies approximately 151,400 acres of land, including Buena Vista Lake land, as comprising the ranch.
Yes.
And it identifies only 40,000 of those acres as being irrigated, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, could we scroll to the bottom of PDF of the next page, please? Very good, right there. And there's that heading entitled value. Do you see that, Dr. Littlefield?
I do.
And the first 2 sentences state that the ranch has been appraised at $10 million. Is that right?
Yes.
And then there's a sort of a table down below, and that table indicates that the ranch's fixed sale price is $7.5 million, correct?
Yes.
And then at the bottom, or towards the bottom, so there's a statement that says liability to purchaser $8 million. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Mullen, can we scroll to PDF page 97, please? And let's go, so sorry, this shows table number 10, and the table is.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you start that over? There was interference. I didn't hear what you said, Mr. Bivens.
Sure, just for the record, we're on page 97 of the PDF, and it identifies at the top, table number 10, showing the cost of ranch and development. Do you see that, Dr. Littlefield?
Yes.
And let's scroll down towards the bottom, please. There we go. You see at the very bottom of the page, the table reads, required outlay by purchaser, $8 million. Do you see that?
I do.
And that's the same number as the liability to purchaser number that we saw on PDF page 5, right?
Yes, it's the same number. I'm not sure that it's referring to the same material, but it is the same number.
Okay, and let's go back up to PDF page 5, please, Ms. Mullen. And let's scroll down back to the table we were looking at on value. And so we see the right above, or I'm sorry, right below fixed sale price, there's an item that reads recommended improvements for irrigation and reclamation. And that's listed at $3.5 million, correct?
Yes,
And that refers to Lippincott's recommendations in this report, right?
that's my understanding.
Okay. And then it appears to indicate that the sale price of the ranch plus the costs of the recommended improvements would be $8 million. Is that right? I'm
The
sorry,
sale,
excuse me, I said that wrong. Let me get that. Yeah, let me do my math right. The cost of the fixed sale price of the ranch plus the recommended improvements is $11 million, right?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about misspeaking there. And Lippincott's summary table here indicates the possibility that $3 million of the improvements could be financed with 40-year state irrigation bonds, right?
Yes,
And then, so if you subtract that $3 million worth of financing, you get that $8 million number directly below, correct?
yes, and I want to stress here, I'm not an economist, and nor am I a realtor. So I'm reading this as a layperson. I would agree with that, but I don't want to put myself out there as an expert in this field.
Sure, but you would agree with me that that $8 million number there appears to represent the outlay to a purchaser associated with purchasing the Miller and Lux Ranch and making Lippincott's recommended improvements, right?
And that's what it would appear to be, correct.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Littlefield. So down below that $8 million number, there's an item that reads value when improved at prices that will attract prompt purchase or of productive farm values. And it reads, this is roughly $16.8 million, correct?
Yes,
So Lippincott's estimate here is suggesting that someone who purchased the ranch for $7.5 million and made his recommended improvements and obtained $3 million worth of bond financing could expect to receive more than a 100% return on the initial $8 million.
Sorry, I can't hear you at all.
you kind of cut out there on me too.
And I think I know what the problem is, Dr. Littlefield, because your box is lighting up when those noises come through. I wonder if there's a gardener out there. But let's see if we can do that again. So Lippincott's estimate here suggests that if a purchaser bought the ranch for $7.5 million, made his recommended improvements, and financed $3 million worth of those improvements with 40-year state irrigation district bonds, that purchaser could expect to receive a more than 100% return on that initial $8 million outlay. Is that your understanding?
That as a layperson, that would be my understanding. That's why I called this report as a proposal and then an appraisal.
No. Okay, thank you. That's helpful, Dr. Littlefield. So let's go back to Buena Vista 900 PDF page 25, please. And good, we're looking at paragraph 59. And you've indicated, Dr. Littlefield, that Percy Clark was the person to whom the 1919 Lippincott Means Report was addressed, correct?
Yes,
And then you've stated on lines 8 through 11 that Mr. Clark requested this report in his capacity as a member of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company's Board of Directors, and then parenthetically, and as a real estate agent and developer, right?
yes,
And you've not cited a source for that statement in your written rebuttal testimony, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Let's go back quickly, Ms. Mullen, to Buena Vista 914, PDF page 16. And maybe we could zoom in a bit, please, Ms. Mullen. And Dr. Littlefield, this is the cover letter providing the 1919 Lippincott Means Report to Percy Clark, correct?
Yes,
And it does not indicate that it is being provided to him in his capacity as a member of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company's Board of Directors, right?
that's correct.
Okay. In fact, there's no statement in the 1919 Lippincott Means Report that Mr. Clark was acting in his capacity as a member of the Board of Directors of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company in requesting the report, correct?
That's correct, but I think it's a reasonable conclusion given that he was on the board of directors.
Okay. Isn't it all? So actually, we'll come back to that. There's nothing in the 1919 Lippincott Means Report that explicitly states that Clark asked for the report because Miller and Lux wanted a way to help end the title insurance litigation, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And your testimony does not reference any document that contains an explicit request from Clark to Lippincott or Means to provide this report in order to end the title insurance case, right?
That's correct.
And let's go back to Buena Vista 900, PDF page 30, please, Ms. Muller. And we'll look at paragraph 65. And Dr. Littlefield, in addition to being a member on the Kern Valley Reclamation Company Board of Directors, Percy Clark had his own business interests in Kern County, right?
That's
Sorry.
correct. You-
He had his own what? I was too much noise.
Okay, let me try it. We'll try that again for the record. Thanks, ma'am. Sorry, we've got these interruptions. In addition to being a member on the Kern Valley Reclamation Company Board of Directors, Percy Clark had his own business interests in Kern County, right?
In Kern County or in Miller and Lux properties or both, or
In Kern County generally. Let's start there.
apparently so.
Okay. And in fact, according to the Lippincott Means Report, he owned large ranch properties in the vicinity of Miller and Lux's Southern Division, right?
I don't think that was in the Lippincott Means Report. I'm willing to take your word on it. I think given what we've gone through here, it seems pretty evident he did.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that's really clear on the record, Dr. Littlefield. So Ms. Mullen, can we please go back to KWBA 30, PDF page 7, please? And then we'll just go back down to the last paragraph on that page, please, Ms. Mullen. And that first sentence reads, Mr. Percy Clark is an owner of large ranch properties in this vicinity, right?
Yes,
And the vicinity that is being referred to here is the Miller and Lux Southern Division Ranch, correct?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Littlefield. And let's go back, Ms. Mullen, back to Dr. Littlefield's testimony, Exhibit 900, Buena Vista 900. And we'll look at PDF page 25, please. And just looking back at lines 8 through 11, you've indicated that Mr. Clark was acting in his capacity as a member of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company's board of directors and as a real estate agent and developer in his own right, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it true that the 1919 Lippincott Means Report evaluates the Miller and Lux Ranch as a potential investment?
Yes.
Okay. In developing your opinion that Clark asked for the 1919 Lippincott Means Report in his capacity as a director of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company?
I'm sorry, that was kind of garbled. Could you repeat it?
Sure. In developing your opinion that Clark asked for the 1919 Lippincott Means Report in his capacity as a director of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company, and because Miller and Lux wanted a way to help end the title insurance litigation, you didn't rule out the possibility that Clark asked for the study because he was considering purchasing the Miller and Lux Ranch, right?
No, I did not rule that out. I think it's quite possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Littlefield. Just so we're clear, Mr. Clark did not ultimately purchase the Miller and Lux Ranch, correct?
That's correct. He did not.
And in fact, no single individual purchased the Miller and Lux Ranch in its entirety, right?
That's correct.
How late into the 20th century was Miller and Lux attempting to sell portions of its Southern Division land?
I think I'm basing this on recollection of my research, which was done quite a while ago, but I think they were still selling properties into the 1930s. I don't remember specifically where, but I think they not only were selling it before Buena Vista went into operation in the late 1920s, but I think they continued to sell the property after that with the idea that those parcels would be included in the district and would carry water rights linked to the district.
And when you refer to those parcels, which parcels are you referring to?
I'm talking about the parcels that wound up within Buena Vista Water Storage District.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So just to be clear, when Miller and Lux was selling portions of its Southern Division ranch located north of Wasco Road into the 1930s, it did not anticipate that those lands would be included within Buena Vista, correct?
I don't know which parcels were sold when. I do know that the parcels that were in the district were intended to be watered by water rights that were associated with the district.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Littlefield. Ms. Mullen, can we scroll down to the top of PDF page 31? That's where paragraph 65 of Dr. Littlefield's testimony continues. And you've summarized here, Dr. Littlefield, the 1919 Lippincott Means Report as a proposal directing Miller and Lux's Second Point surface waters to the lands north of Wasco Road while providing those south of that road, today's BVWSD, with water supplies from groundwater wells. Is that right?
Yes.
And to be clear, that proposal was never implemented, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And let's continue on to paragraph 66. That's good. I'm going to focus on the first sentence there. So we're good there. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. And you've written here in paragraph 66 that proponents of the future BVWSD accepted the Lippincott means idea when they made the original proposal for the district. Is that right?
Yes,
And the original proposal for the district was rejected by California water authorities in 1923, right?
yes, that's what it says in my rebuttal testimony.
And then after that occurred, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. After that rejection occurred, BVWSD's backers then proposed a smaller district for just areas south of Wasco Road. Is that right?
Yes,
And in offering that opinion, you've cited your case in chief testimony at pages 67 through 70, correct?
yes,
And then you go on in paragraph 66 to say this new plan included directing all of the surface water supplies under the 1919 Lippincott means concept into the smaller district, today's BVWSD, to supply those lands together with well water in an overall coordinated water management plan. And did I read that right?
yes,
And just to be clear, by well water, you mean groundwater, right?
correct.
So, Ms. Mullen, let's pull up Buena Vista 600, please, and go to PDF page 69.
Mr. Bivens, we've been going about an hour and Dr. Littlefield is sitting in an 85-degree room. Can we take a short break?
We absolutely can. I will tell you that I will wrap up probably pretty shortly after the break, but yeah, let's go ahead and do that if it's okay with the hearing officer.
Yes, let's
Thank
do
you very
that. I
much.
was going to suggest it and anticipated in any case, let's do that. It is 2:25. Let's come back at 2:35.
Thank
Thank you.
Ms. Kennedy.
Okay, it looks like we're back. I see Dr. Littlefield, Mr. Bivens, and Mr. Becerra. So let's go ahead and go back on the record. Mr. Bivens, I will turn things back to you to continue your cross-examination of Dr. Littlefield.
Thank you. And Dr. Littlefield, I'm sorry you're in an 85-degree house. I can't imagine that's a very comfortable way to testify.
Well, it's better than it would have been yesterday. The temperature hit 95 in my office yesterday, so I'm 10 degrees better today. So anyway.
So it really feels like paradise?
Well, not quite. I do have a big fan going because no air conditioning, but I'm doing fine, thank you.
All right, I'm glad to hear that. Before we left on the break, I think we had just looked at paragraph 66 of your rebuttal testimony, and we were talking about what you called a new plan that included directing all of the surface water supplies under the 1919 Lippincott means concept into today's Buena Vista to supply those lands with well water in an overall, what you've called an overall coordinated water management plan. Is that your recollection too?
Yes.
And I think we also established that by well water, you meant groundwater. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks. I needed to reorient myself there, Dr. Littlefield. So with that, let's pull up Buena Vista 600. Please, Ms. Mullen. And PDF page 69. And I believe PDF, if we could scroll down just a hair, please, Ms. Mullen, to confirm that this is internal page 68 of Dr. Littlefield's case in chief testimony. Okay, very good. And Ms. Mullen, I'm sorry. I thank you for helping me make a clear record here. Let's go back to paragraph 149 at the top of this page. And Dr. Littlefield, I'd just like you to read paragraph 149 to yourself. Let me know when you're done.
Okay, I've read it.
Okay, and you've referred to Harding's 1924 supplemental report on feasibility of proposed Buena Vista Water Storage District, Kern County, as Exhibit Buena Vista 651 in paragraph 149 of your case in chief testimony, correct?
Yes.
And is Exhibit Buena Vista 651 the new plan that you referred to in paragraph 66 of your rebuttal testimony?
I believe it is.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, let's pull, well, actually, I'll tell you what, Dr. Littlefield, 651 is pretty tough to read from my perspective. So Ms. Mullen, could you please pull up Exhibit KWBA 15? All right, and if we could scroll to page 2 of this exhibit, please. And Dr. Littlefield, does this appear to be the 1924 Harding report that you produced as Exhibit Buena Vista 651 referred to?
Yes,
I'm
it
sorry, I
appears to
didn't
be.
hear anything after 651.
That's the end of my.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes, it appears to be the 1924 supplemental report.
Okay, thank you. And let's go to internal page 14, which is page 18 of the PDF, please, Ms. Mullen. And I think we will need to zoom in a hair. Dr. Littlefield, can you see that text okay?
Could we blow it up a little bit more, please? And maybe one more time. Okay, I can read it now.
And Dr. Littlefield, I'm going to direct your attention to the third sentence on that page. And it begins, should groundwater development prove feasible? Do you see that?
I do.
And it's not your opinion that Harding opined in this report that groundwater development within the proposed district actually was feasible, correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Well, it's not your opinion that Harding opined in this report that groundwater development within the proposed district actually was feasible, right?
Right. I think what he was talking about here was beyond what was already existed, not further groundwater development such as the Lippincott Means report was proposing.
Okay, so he's not indicating here in this report that he believes groundwater development as proposed in Lippincott Means was actually feasible, right?
Beyond what existed at the time, right?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Littlefield. Can we pull up Exhibit Buena Vista 663, please, Ms. Mullen? And Dr. Littlefield, Exhibit 663 is what you've referred to as the Hyatt report, correct?
Yes.
And you previously testified that this Hyatt report became the model for completing Buena Vista's organization and beginning its operations?
I believe so.
And this was approved, actually, if we scroll down just a hair, please, Ms. Mullen. A little more. Well, maybe it's not there. Dr. Littlefield, this report was approved in 1928, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and that's about 4 years after the Harding report that we just looked at in KWBA 15 and Buena Vista 651.
That's correct.
And Ms. Mullen, could you turn to PDF page 13, please? And you see there, Dr. Littlefield, on PDF page 13 of the Hyatt report, the heading District Plan.
I see that.
And you'd agree that the District Plan section of this report continues on to PDF page 18?
I'll take your word for it. Sure.
Okay, I will represent to you that it does.
Okay.
You would agree that there's no mention of groundwater in this district plan section of the Hyatt report, correct?
I have not read this section in a long time. If you'd like me to read it, I will, but I'm willing to take your word.
I think I would like you to take a look at it and confirm that it doesn't mention groundwater in this district plan section, please.
Okay, and how far do you want me to read this? Starting with district plan and then how far beyond that?
It goes to the end of the section on page 18, PDF page.
Okay, Ms. Mullen, if we just leave it right there for a second, and then when I get to the bottom, I'll let you know.
Actually, Dr. Littlefield, you know what? Maybe I can short circuit this for everyone on the Zoom. Does the Does the discussion of the district plan in the Hyatt report accurately represent what you understood the district plan to be?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I think with that, I have no further questions on cross-examination, Ms. Kenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens. Does anyone else have cross-examination questions for Dr. Littlefield? And I don't have any questions at this time, so I'll look to you, Mr. Becerra. Do you have any redirect for Dr. Littlefield?
I do.
Are you prepared to proceed now, or do you need a few minutes?
I could use 5 minutes if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Let's go ahead and take 5 minutes. We'll come back at 2:53.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back on the record. Mr. Becerra, you may proceed with questions. I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo.
Ms. Kenzie, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I think the interference we're getting is coming from Dr. Littlefield's office, and it might be helpful if he muted his microphone while he's not speaking. I think that will clear up a bit of the issue.
Sure, and he's done that. Thank you. So I will turn to you, Mr. Becerra. You may proceed with any redirect questions you have for Dr. Littlefield.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up the last exhibit we were looking at, Buena Vista 663? And go ahead, Ms. Mullen. Thank you for the moment. And Dr. Littlefield, do you remember Mr. Bivens asking you questions about this section called District Plan?
I do.
And can and I believe you stated that this particular section didn't discuss groundwater supply. Is that accurate?
I don't recall that I said that. I was in the process of reading the section when Mr. Bivens decided to summarize his question.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to PDF page 3 of this document? And Dr. Littlefield, do you recognize this as a portion of the table of contents of what we call the Hyatt report?
Yes, I do.
Do you see in the table of contents that this document contains a section entitled Underground Supply?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please pull up exhibit Buena Vista 923? And Dr. Littlefield, do you recognize this as the list of wells from the Lippincott report?
Yes.
And do you understand that Mr. Lippincott used the Mendenhall reports as a source of information for this table?
Yes, he specifically mentioned that he had looked at and used the Mendenhall reports.
Okay. And the Mendenhall reports, the field work for those was done in 1905 to 1907. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please scroll down until we see the green highlighted rows? Thank you very much. So, Dr. Littlefield, I'm just going to run through a few wells here, and I might ask you to take notes of the numbers because they'll be relevant. So,
okay, go ahead.
Do you see that well 248 was owned by Miller and Lux?
So
Yes,
at this
yes, I
point,
see.
I'm sorry. At this point, I'm going to interpose an objection. I didn't ask Dr. Littlefield any questions whatsoever about this Lippincott table. I think this is outside the scope of my cross-examination.
Mr. Becerra, would you like to respond?
Mr. Bivens' last line of questions was about whether groundwater could have been included in the Buena Vista district plan. So I think this is relevant.
And of course, Dr. Littlefield testified on cross-examination that this proposal from Lippincott was never adopted, and it's certainly not part of the district plan. So again, I think this is outside the scope.
If I could have one further response, Ms.
Yeah.
Kinsey.
Please.
The knowledge of Miller and Lux of groundwater would have been relevant to the development of the plan.
I don't even think it's been established based on that cross-examination, Ms. Kenzie, that Miller and Lux ever received a copy of the Lippincott report.
Well, we can get to that too on redirect if we want to.
Well, I'm going to allow this line of questioning. I think if only to clarify some of my understanding, I think it might be productive for me. So I'm going to allow this. Please go ahead, Mr. Becerra.
Thank you. Dr. Littlefield, referring back to Exhibit Buena Vista 923, do you see that well 248 was a Miller and Lux well?
Yes, I see that.
And do you see that well 252 was a Miller and Lux well?
Correct.
You see that well 272 was a Miller and Lux well?
Did you want me to keep a list of these?
Ideally.
Okay, so we're up to 252, and what's the next one?
272. That's a Miller and Lux well.
Ms. Kenzie, I'll just object one more time. This is redirect. I don't think Mr. Becerra is entitled to lead his own witness on redirect.
That might be true, but I think that might be the most efficient way to get through this on the other. So your objections noted, Mr. Bivens. I'd like to get through this efficiently. So I'm going to allow it here just to march through these wells. Go ahead, Mr. Becerra.
Thank you. So Dr. Littlefield, just to confirm, well 272 is a Miller and Lux well, is that correct?
That's correct.
And well 273 is a Miller and Lux well, is that accurate?
Yes.
And well 274 is a Miller and Lux well, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to Exhibit Buena Vista 924? This is one of the ones that, oh, it came up. Okay, Ms. Mullen, can we please go down to the bottom end of the green and yellow shaded area? And we'll need to blow that up pretty significantly. And just to orient ourselves, Dr. Littlefield, the red lines on this map, do they represent canals?
They do, and I think just to offer what may be a slight correction, you said green and yellow shaded area. I think it's actually light blue and yellow. The green shaded area is north of Wasco Road.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Dr. Littlefield, do you see well 274 on this map?
Maybe Dr. Littlefield's eyes are better than mine, but I can't see a thing. So I think we have to zoom in a little more, please, Ms. Mullen.
And we might need to do a little more.
Yeah, now I can see numbers.
Yes, I can. Do you want me to answer now?
Well, let me, for the record, let me just ask a question. Do you see well 274?
Yes, 274 is to the southeast of the word canal in the yellow area. It's toward the, I believe that's 274. It looks like it's kind of scratched out a little bit. Anyway, toward the southern end of what is today the Buena Vista Water Storage District.
And is it essentially right on top of one of the canals?
Very close to it, yes.
Okay, and do you see well 273, another Miller and Lux well?
Yes, that one is almost due north of 274. It's in the blue shaded area, immediately to the left or west of another labeled canal.
I'm going to object again, Ms. Kenzie. The relationship and location of the wells in relationship to canals is not something that I went into on cross-examination, and it's beyond scope.
That might be right, Mr. Bivens, but I'd like to see, I'm finding this exercise useful. You will have a chance for recross on these questions to to some extent, this is an exercise in showing me where the wells are, and so the objection's overruled. And I'll also just note for you, Mr. Becerra, I haven't, again, my eyes, maybe the light isn't good. I can't find 273. So to
Okay.
help me find where they're located, I think it is relevant to identify the canals, because then I can try to find the well number.
Ms. Mullen, can we blow that up a little further? I apologize, Ms. Kinsey. This one, it can be tough to read.
And part of it is my state issued laptop. Okay. I found 273. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Littlefield, would well 273 be within the current Buena Vista service area?
Yes, I believe it is.
And would Miller and Lux well 272 be within the current Buena Vista service area?
Correct.
Okay. And Ms. Mullen, can we go diagonally up to the left? We're looking for well 252. There we go. Dr. Littlefield, do you see Miller and Lux well 252?
I do.
And is that within the current Buena Vista service area?
I believe it is.
Okay, and Ms. Mullen, we're going to need to go directly up. We're looking for well 248. There we go. Do you see well Miller and Lux well 248, Dr. Littlefield?
Yes, it's at the extreme eastern side of the, hard to describe what it is, but at the extreme eastern side of the green shaded box.
Do you know whether that well is within the current Buena Vista service area?
I think it is. I'm not 100% positive without looking at a contemporary map of the district.
Is it at least very close to the current Buena Vista service area?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, can we please go to exhibit KWBA 30? And preliminarily, I believe there was some discussion of an entity called the Kern Valley Reclamation Company. Is that right?
That's correct.
And what's your understanding of what the purpose of that entity was?
From the Kern Valley Water Company's articles of incorporation, which I believe I made an exhibit to my rebuttal testimony, it said specifically that the company's purpose was to extend the existing Miller and Lux Canal system northward almost to Tulare Lake, to both on the west side of Miller and Lux's lands and on the east side. So to basically provide all of that area with water north of Wasco Road, and also the drain down the middle was going to be extended as well.
And Dr. Littlefield, I believe you just said Kern Valley Water Company. Did you mean Kern Valley Reclamation Company?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's very easy to get them confused. I meant Kern Valley Reclamation Company.
And Dr. Littlefield, on exhibit KWBA 30, PDF page 7, I believe, what we're looking at, do you see the paragraph that begins Mr. Percy Clark?
Yeah, I do.
Do you recall discussing this with Mr. Bivens?
I do.
And do you see the third sentence in the paragraph that reads, the company with which he is associated is part owner with the Miller and Lux estate in the reservoir, irrigation, and reclamation projects mentioned below?
I see that, yes.
Are you aware that there was an association of entities that managed Buena Vista Lake Reservoir?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And this sentence that begins the company, do you know whether that company was the title insurance company?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Was Mr. Clark associated with the Cox interests? To the best of your
Yes,
knowledge?
as I recall, he was.
And was the title insurance and trust company the successor to the Cox interests?
Yes.
And title insurance and trust sued Miller and Lux to obtain Second Point Water Supplies. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So is it possible here that the reference to the company in this paragraph you discussed with Mr. Bivens was Title Insurance and Trust?
It could be, yes.
And this states Mr. Clark was associated with that company. Is that right?
Yes.
I have no further redirect for Dr. Littlefield, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. I will turn back to you, Mr. Bivens. Based on those questions, do you have additional or recross examination for Dr. Littlefield?
Yes, very, very briefly.
Please go ahead.
Ms. Mullen, can you pull back up the exhibit we were just looking at? I think it was KWBA 30. And Dr. Littlefield, with Mr. Becerra, he just talked about this sentence that reads, the company with which he is associated is part. Dr. Littlefield, can I ask you, just so we have a clear record, when you're not speaking?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Yes, and that's my point. Can I ask you again to please mute when you're not speaking? Thank you, Dr. Littlefield. I appreciate that. A few minutes ago, during Mr. Becerra's redirect, you discussed the sentence that reads on this page, KWBA 30, the company with which he is associated is part owner with the Miller and Lux estate in the reservoir, irrigation and reclamation projects mentioned below, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Becerra asked you whether the company that's referenced here was the title insurance company, right?
Yes.
And is it your testimony that as of 1919, the title insurance company was a part owner together with the Miller and Lux estate in Buena Vista Reservoir?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Ms. Mullen, could we scroll to PDF page 68, please? Let's scroll down a little further, please, Ms. Mullen. Perfect. And so I'm looking at the last paragraph on this page, Dr. Littlefield, and it reads, the lands on which Buena Vista Lake is situated are owned by the Buena Vista Lake Reservoir Association, correct?
Yes.
And it goes on to say the purpose of that the Buena Vista Lake Reservoir Association was organized for the purpose of regulating those waters. Do you see that?
I do.
And then it goes on to describe the interests in the reservoir association down below, correct?
Yes.
And the title insurance company is not listed as holding an interest in the reservoir, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens. With that, I think we've completed the examination of Dr. Littlefield. Dr. Littlefield, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for braving your office. I'm glad you were there today and not sitting there yesterday, so that worked out. I very much appreciate your time and your testimony, and thank you so much for returning with us today.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you, Dr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens, Mr. Becerra, and Ms. Mullen.
Thank you, Dr. Littlefield. Stay cool.
Before we turn to Dr. Miller, I think.
I'm going to sign off now. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Before we turn to Dr. Miller, I think a couple of housekeeping matters, and then we can take a brief break and turn to Dr. Miller. The first matter, according to my count, I think we have 3 witnesses left to hear from. One is Dr. Miller. Then we have Mr. Young with KCWA, and then Mr. Unruh. Does anyone want to correct me on my math? Does that seem about right? I think with that, I'm not being overly optimistic when I say I believe we'll complete this rebuttal portion of the hearing tomorrow and will not have to reconvene on Friday. Does anyone have any information that would suggest that I'm being overly optimistic on that? Okay, so that information is particularly directed to you, Mr. Cooney. I'm sure you're listening, but I believe we won't need the services of the court reporter on Friday, to the best of my expectation and knowledge. So,
and I think what their practice will be tomorrow morning, they would advise us for confirmation for Friday. I may have our staff check in with them as to whether we can get it maybe at a noontime tomorrow to make a final cut, but it sounds like we're all optimistic that probably not.
It seems very likely to me. I think we'll move right along. So thank you.
Very good.
The other housekeeping matter that I thought we might as well address now is the corrected testimony of Mr. Unruh. I wanted to confirm, I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mr. Unruh? Am I giving that? Yes, as far as we know.
Yes, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you. I went and looked at that. I think it had the corrected testimony. We did receive it. It had escaped my attention when I was doing the evidentiary ruling because we had not saved it in our exhibits folder. We now have a copy of TLB WSD 100C saved in the exhibits folder on the AHO FTP site for this matter. So you will see it there. I took a look at that testimony. Based on my review, it does not change my evidentiary ruling, although I will issue a corrected version of the ruling so that it's clear in the ruling that I was referring to 100C and not 100. And then I believe the appropriate scope of rebuttal and cross-examination for Mr. Unruh would be the corrected testimony 100C, unless anyone would like, so I'll pause there. On any of those points, would anyone like to raise any either objections or clarifications about those issues?
Yes, Hearing Officer Kinsey, Josh Fox for Tulare Lake Basin Water Storage District. The only suggested modification of the strike as applied to the corrected testimony that I would suggest is not striking paragraph 26 of the corrected testimony. That basically sort of assists in explaining what the district's doing and what it won't do. So it's not really an attempt to apply any sort of expert principles there. I would note that it's situated under a heading which may be properly stricken under the court's reasoning. The heading, the Lake Bay Junior Sump license, should have been included in the water availability analysis, but paragraph 26, which is modified, basically states that the district will abide by adjudication of these contractual agreements between the parties. And further states that it does not dispute any party's express apportionment of Kern River water conferred by the 1962 agreement and the 1963 and 1974 agreement. So as I see it, that may be helpful. It doesn't opine in an improperly expert sense, and it might provide, hopefully it would diminish the number of questions on cross. So for that reason, I would just suggest that small modification.
And for the record, Ms. Kinsey, I think I actually agree with Mr. Fox that paragraph 26 of TLB 100C probably ought to remain in. I do not believe that gets into any improper expert opinions about water availability analyses.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens, and thank you, Mr. Fox. I very much appreciate that. I see now that there was that change to paragraph 26. Given that there's no objections to retaining the corrected version of paragraph 26, as I understand, then that paragraph we haven't moved it into evidence yet, but it's not excluded based on my evidentiary ruling. And I will make that correction or reflect that in a corrected version of the evidentiary ruling.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or objections to raise on Mr. Unruh's corrected testimony? So when I issue this ruling, if something comes up, if you read the corrected evidentiary ruling and you have a question or concern, when I get that out, please let me know, because we're doing this a little bit on the fly, and I'm trying to make sure that the written record reflects what we actually did in the hearing. With that, I think that wraps up my 2 items on housekeeping. Is there anything else we should address before we turn to Dr. Miller? All right, with that, Mr. Becerra, are you prepared to present Dr. Miller as your next witness?
We are, if I could have 5 minutes to set up.
Of course. Let's
Thank you.
return at 3:25. All right, I think we can go back on the record. It's 3:25. Mr. Becerra, are you prepared to call your next witness at this time?
Yes. Buena Vista Water Storage District calls Dr. David Miller.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Miller. If you would please go off mute. Thank you. And please raise your right hand and I will administer the oath. Dr. Miller, do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. And you may proceed, Mr. Becerra.
Thank you very much. Dr. Miller, can you please state your name for the record?
David Miller.
And is Exhibit Buena Vista 1200 your written rebuttal testimony?
Yes, it is.
Have you provided your statement of qualifications in this hearing previously?
Yes.
And is Exhibit Buena Vista 1201 a summary of your rebuttal testimony?
It is.
And Ms. Mullen, could we please pull up Exhibit Buena Vista 1201? And while she's doing that, Dr. Miller, are exhibits 1202 through 1211 the exhibits to your rebuttal testimony?
That's correct.
Using Exhibit Buena Vista 1201, please provide a written summary. And Ms. Kinsey, we've allocated Dr. Miller the remaining amount of our 80 minutes.
Good. Ms. Mullen, could you go to the next slide, please? All right. So this will be a comparison of 2017 evaporation rates from cells 1, 2, and 2R, and from nearby Kern water bank facilities. The testimony submitted by the water bank states that evaporation from Buena Vista Lake cells 1, 2, and 2R in 2017 was unreasonable and a waste of water because of the high percentage of water lost to evaporation from these cells. This assessment should be viewed in the context of evaporation losses from nearby water bank facilities. The following ITRC metric images provide a visual comparison of evaporation rates from KWBA facilities and from cells 1, 2, and 2R. The ITRC metric approach used in this analysis is the same as that used by Dr. Davids to estimate crop evapotranspiration that has previously been submitted in testimony in this hearing. Ms. Mullen, next slide, please.
Can you speak up just a little bit more, Dr. Miller, please?
Yes. As the legend shows, the green outline on this aerial image denotes the boundaries of KWBA lands, and the blue outline marks the boundaries of cells 1, 2, and 2R. You'll note that these lands lie quite close to one another, with the nearest point being only 2.6 miles apart. Next slide, please. This is the first of a series of monthly images displaying evapotranspiration from cells 1, 2, and 2R, and from land within the boundaries of the water bank. This particular image is over the period, or the series of images extends from March through October of 2017. Since evaporation from water surfaces is the dominant component of the evapotranspiration shown on these images, I'll refer to what's being displayed simply as evaporation. The color coding on the legend denotes rates of evaporation that range from a light yellow color for a low rate to progressively darker colors indicating progressively higher rates. For the monthly map, the darkest shade represents 11 inches per month of evaporation. The image for March shows low evaporation rates for cells 1, 2, and 2R as the cells begin to fill, and shows low to moderately low evaporation rates within the boundaries of the water bank. Next slide, please. In April, evaporation rates have increased as the weather warms and as water is brought into the water bank for recharge and into cells 1, 2, and 2R for storage. This image illustrates that while almost all of the land within the boundaries of cells 1, 2, and 2R is used for storage at some point during these months. Not all of the land within the boundaries of the water bank is occupied by recharge ponds. So these lands that are not flooded don't contribute to significant evaporation, as we'll see in this series of slides. Next slide, please, Ms. Miller. In May, we see evaporation rates continue to increase in both the water bank and at cells 1, 2, and 2R, with the deeper hues that denote higher evaporation rates being more prominent at the water bank. Next slide, please. In June, well, first of all, for this slide, I'll expand a little bit upon what's shown in the bullets here. So in June, evaporation rates further increase at some areas of the water bank and at cell 1, while rates decline in other parts of the water bank and at cells 2 and 2R. Peak rates are observed in cell 1 and at some locations in the water bank. Next slide, please. In July, evaporation rates increase at the water bank and at cell 2, while decreasing at cells 1 and 2R as water is moved among these cells. Next slide, please. For August, we see a decline in evaporation rates within the water bank. However, some areas continue to exhibit relatively high rates. We also see a more general decline within the area of BV Lake as water is released from storage. Good. Next slide, please. In September, evaporation continues from the water bank while declining from the August rates as water remains ponded in some locations for storage. Evaporation from cells 1, 2, and 2R is now at uniformly minimal levels due to the release of water from storage. Next slide. For October, we see the decline in evaporation continues at the water bank, and in many areas showing low evaporation, while there remains some moderately low evaporation. So this image looks really pretty similar to the March condition. And similarly, evaporation from cells 1, 2, and 2R is also minimal, again, similar to the condition in March. Thank you. Now on to the next slide. All right, now this is an annual evaporation profile for 2017. And so this image represents annual evaporation for the year and combines data shown on each of the preceding monthly images with data for January, February, November, and December. And since these are each months with low evaporation, we haven't included slides for these months in this series. While the shading in some of the previous figures, well, this maintains the coloration, the shading in the previous figures, kind of the scale of the shading is different. So here the deepest blue represents not the monthly figure of 11 inches, but an annual total of 70 inches. The darker hues within the water bank, in comparison with those within Buena Vista or within Buena Vista Lake, are really due to the fact that during peak periods, the peak rates at the two locations are quite similar, but that the period of inundation and hence of evaporation is longer at the water bank than at Buena Vista Lake over the course of 2017. So now, Ms. Mullen, next slide, please. So to summarize, ITRC metric imagery was used to compare 2017 evaporation rates between cells 1, 2, and 2R and nearby facilities at the water bank. Monthly evaporation rates at the water bank facilities are comparable during the peak period to those at cells 1, 2, and 2R, but the annual total is higher from these images than recorded at or observed at cells 1, 2, and 2R, largely because of the longer period of inundation. So thank you very much, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Mr. Becerra, do you have any additional questions for your witness?
I do not.
Thank you. With that, I will turn to, looks like Mr. O'Brien. Do you have questions for Dr. Miller?
I do. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Dr. Miller. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Good to see you.
If Ms. Mullen, if we could pull up Dr. Miller's testimony, rebuttal testimony, Buena Vista 1200, and turn to paragraph 4. And in that paragraph 4, I'll just let you read it to yourself rather than read it out loud.
Yes.
And you state in the last sentence that this assessment, and I assume you're referring to the opinion that use of Buena Vista cells 1, 2, and 2R was unreasonable and a waste of water in 2017. That assessment should be viewed in the context of evaporation losses from nearby KWPA facilities. Is that your testimony?
That's right. That I think in describing the evaporation losses from cells 1 and 2R, 1, 2, and 2R, it's also useful to look at evaporation losses from neighboring areas, such as those of the water bank.
Okay. Were you able to watch or have you reviewed Mr. John Parker's rebuttal testimony from yesterday?
I saw bits of it, but not the entire rebuttal.
Okay. Mr. Parker was asked a series of questions by hearing officer Kinsey relating to, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but the relevance of the underlying soil characteristics in these surface water storage facilities, such as lakes 1, 2, and 2R, and also the Kern Water Bank storage basins. Did you hear any of that testimony?
I did not hear that, no.
Okay. Well, as I understood it, Mr. Parker made the point that in assessing the overall efficiency of these types of surface water storage facilities, besides evaporation rates, it's very important to also consider the soil characteristics of the land on which the water is being stored. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, to me, the two facilities have different purposes. And at the water bank, the soils are, in order to achieve the recharge purpose of the water bank, are permeable. And so, infiltration is important. At Buena Vista Lake, there the purpose of the facility is surface water storage. There the soils are impermeable. And so the soils are different because, and they suit the basic missions of these two facilities because of these differences.
Okay. But if we're trying to evaluate the overall efficiency of the two types of facilities, the Buena Vista cells and the Kern Water Bank evaporation basins, in relation to this issue of unreasonable and waste of water that you mentioned in your testimony, isn't it also important, besides evaporation losses, to consider the rate of percolation that's a function of the soils? Wouldn't you want to look at that?
Objection, vague and ambiguous as to overall efficiencies.
Will you break it down, Mr. O'Brien, please?
Well, what we're talking about here, as I understand it, Dr. Miller, is your rebutting testimony, opinion testimony by KWBA witnesses to the effect that the use of Buena Vista cells 1, 2, and 2R in 2017 constituted waste and unreasonable use. Am I correct with that?
Correct.
Okay. So in considering whether a particular use of water is unreasonable or wasteful, as an engineer, wouldn't you want to assess or evaluate the overall fate of the water in the particular facility, whether that's through evaporation or through percolation into a groundwater aquifer? Wouldn't that be a reasonable thing to do as an engineer?
Well, yes, but another dimension there is the utility of the facility. If the facility's intention is to store surface water and not to recharge it, the ability of it to minimize percolation and to not recharge the aquifer at that particular location so that the water is available for distribution, in this case, to the Buttonville service area.
But in this paragraph 4, you're comparing Buena Vista cells 1, 2, and 2R to the Kern water bank recharge basins, correct?
Only from the dimension of evaporation.
And that's my point. You've limited your analysis to rates of evaporation, but you haven't considered, and correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't considered rates of percolation in your overall assessment of whether water use in these facilities is wasteful or unreasonable. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think we've heard this metaphor in this hearing several times, and I'll just use it again as Dr. Davids explained it. You need to know the number and size of the holes in the bottom of the bucket in order to properly analyze how a particular surface reservoir functions. Would you agree with that general proposition?
Yes.
Okay.
But if I might add, again, the functions of these two facilities are different. So for the water bank to accomplish what it is designed to accomplish, it needs to have big holes in the bottom of the bucket. And for cells 1, 2, and 2R to accomplish what they are to accomplish, they need to have as few holes as possible, and they have few holes. So in each case, the soil's conditions are appropriate to the purpose of the particular facility, but the soil's conditions themselves are very different between the two.
Okay. And have you done specific work, either in connection with this case or in the course of your career, to look at the relative soil conditions of Buena Vista Lake cells 1, 2, and 2R versus the soil conditions of the recharge basins located in the Kern water bank?
I have not.
Let's, if Ms. Mullen, if you could pull up Buena Vista 400. And we'll go to PDF page 5, paragraph 10. And this was your original testimony in this case, and you refer to Buena Vista 405, which is a map of surface soil texture that shows how closely the boundaries of the Buttonwillow service area conform to the clay surface soils characteristic of reclaimed swamps, a characteristic that distinguishes this service area from other areas in Kern County. Do you see that?
Yes.
And now I'd like to, Ms. Mullen, pull up Buena Vista 405, which is the map. And this is from Buena Vista's final groundwater sustainability plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this map shows soil properties in the Buena Vista service areas and surrounding areas, correct?
Correct.
If we look at the area shown as the Button Willow service area and the Maples service area, that's shown in a kind of a red orange color, correct?
Ms. Mullen, could you move the image up a little bit? I'm not seeing the southern part that Mr. O'Brien's referring to.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's perfect.
And that, if you look at the, I don't know, we may have to scroll again. If you look at the legend, that color we just identified, the sort of reddish orangish color, corresponds to clay and silty clay soil characteristics. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then if we look at, if we could scroll down, Ms. Mullen. Can you identify in this map the area where the Kern Water Bank's recharge ponds are located?
Approximately, yes. It would be useful to have an overlay, but I can see well enough for the purposes of this.
It's just southeast of the Button Willow service area, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that area is shown with a kind of a green or light orangish color. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, looking at the legend, and tell me if we need to scroll up, I think those colors correspond to a sandy loam and silty clay loam. Is that correct?
I can't see the legend, but I'll certainly take your word for it.
Okay. And then, Ms. Mullen, if we can now pull up KWBA 153. And I'll represent to you, Dr. Miller, that this figure is the University of California Soil Agricultural Groundwater Banking Index ratings.
I'm familiar with this work. Yes.
I figured you were. And what do these the colors on this figure generally indicate?
Just for my use, Ms. Mullen, could you again scroll down so I can see more clearly the area that we're speaking of? But in general, these areas or these colors indicate, as the title of this work suggests, the suitability of a location for groundwater recharge, and it really looks at as the previous map did. Surface soil conditions for the most part, and it doesn't, I would say that the study doesn't include much analysis of, say, clay layers and things like that that are below the surface. So when we're using this study, we typically use it as a kind of a first filter for screening areas for recharge, and then do some drilling and some site-specific studies to look more deeply, one might say, into the suitability.
And again, looking at the legend, and I think we'll need to scroll up to see the legend, Ms. Mullen, or possibly down. There we go.
There we go. Yes.
Yes. And then if we could scroll back up to where the Kern Water Bank facilities are located. There we go. Based on the legend, what is your understanding of what this map is telling us as to the suitability of the Kern Water Bank lands for groundwater recharge?
My understanding of, both from this map and from other sources is that the land is suitable for recharge.
In fact, it's I think it's designated as excellent. Is that correct?
I can't see the legend, but again, I will take your word for it.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Does anyone else have cross-examination questions for Dr. Miller? I don't have any questions at this time. Mr. Becerra, do you have any redirect for Dr. Miller?
I do not.
Thank you. Then with that, I think, Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your testimony today. I appreciate you joining us again and taking the time to be here. So thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Becerra, and thank you, Ms. Mullen. So.
And with that, Mr. Becerra, I think if I understand correctly, we've reached the end of Buena Vista's presentation of its rebuttal witnesses. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at this time, are you prepared to offer Buena Vista's rebuttal exhibits? And I'll include the cross-examination exhibits as well into the evidentiary record. And if you are prepared to do that, I will ask you for the specific numbers because I don't have those in front of me.
I am prepared and I can offer the numbers.
Thank you.
So Buena Vista Water Storage District offers into the record its rebuttal exhibits, and I'm going to leave Buena Vista off the front of the numbers for efficiency. 900 through 926, 1000 through 1002, 1100 through 1105, 1200 through 1211, 813, 814, 816, 817, and 818. And 815 we did not use because Ms. Boissevain preferred not to use that.
And just to clarify, that the 800 series, are those rebuttal exhibits or were those cross exhibits?
Those are cross exhibits.
Those are cross exhibits. Thank you. And then I will look to the room. Are there any remaining evidentiary objections that have not already been addressed in my evidentiary ruling to the admission of those exhibits into the evidentiary record for phase 1B?
Yes, Ms. Kenzie, I'd like to make, excuse me, a limited objection to specific paragraphs of Dr. Littlefield's rebuttal testimony, KWVA 900. And I would specifically like to object to paragraph 59.
And I'm sorry, just pause for a second. I think you mean Buena Vista 900.
Yes,
Not
I do not want to object to my own existence, Ms. Kenzie.
Just clarifying. Thank
Buena
you.
Vista 900 and paragraph 59. Everything beginning after or beginning with the sentence that starts with "in other words" on line 8 of that page, and then paragraph 65 in its entirety. And those the paragraphs I referred to contain Dr. Littlefield's theories about Percy Clark in relation to the Lippincott, the relationship between the Lippincott means report and the title insurance litigation. And I'd like to object to them as speculative and lacking foundation. Dr. Littlefield indicated that he had no documentary support for his theory about the relationship between Lippincott and means and the title insurance litigation. He admitted that the Lippincott and means report was essentially an investment prospectus for buying the entire Miller and Lux Southern Division ranch. And he indicated that it's very possible that the report was requested by Clark, not in any capacity as a director of the Kern Valley Reclamation Company, but in his capacity as a substantial and significant investor in ranch lands in Kern County in the vicinity of Buena Vista. And so there's no evidence that makes it more likely than not that Dr. Littlefield's theory about the relationship between the title insurance litigation and Lippincott and means is true. And so I think it's appropriate to strike those limited portions of his testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens. I'm actually going to go ahead and rule on that objection because I think it's fairly straightforward. In accordance, I think with
Ms. Kinsey, may I be heard?
You may. I'm going to rule in your favor, Mr. Becerra.
Then I will submit.
You're right. It was appropriate for you to say something in case I had forgotten. In accordance with my prior evidentiary rulings, I think I've described, and it may come as no surprise, that the bar for admission of evidence in these types of administrative proceedings is relatively low. And then the phase at which the evaluation of the evidence, its foundation, and its weight comes in once the evidentiary record has been complete and is typically not done at the gatekeeping phase of the proceeding. So the objections you raised, Mr. Bivens, I think are certainly relevant to considering the weight of Dr. Littlefield's testimony. You may, of course, raise these issues in closing briefs with respect to the persuasive value of Dr. Littlefield's testimony, but I am not going to exclude that portion of his testimony on the basis that it is speculative and lacking foundation. So the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens. Mr. Bivens, do you have any other objections to raise to the Buena Vista exhibits that have been offered into evidence?
I do not.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other objections or other to raise before I accept those exhibits into the evidentiary record? With that, I accept the Buena Vista exhibits identified by Mr. Becerra into the evidentiary record for phase 1B of the Kern River application proceeding. And I believe with that, Mr. Becerra, we have completed the presentation of Buena Vista's rebuttal case. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. I believe we now have two remaining witnesses. It's 4 o'clock. I think we're well within, we'll safely be able to wrap up quickly tomorrow. I would certainly consider breaking for the day if there was a general consensus for that, or if I will look to you, Mr. Jacobs, if you'd like to push forward based on the convenience of your witnesses or other. We are here and I'm be willing to do that. Do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference.
Okay.
Unless Mr. Young has a preference based on his schedule tomorrow.
Mr. Young, do you have any thoughts?
Unmuting and coming on.
Thank
I
you.
can be available tomorrow. I had blocked that time. So whatever the convenience of the hearing officer is.
Thank you. Well, I'll pause there and I'll look to the room. Are there any other procedural matters that we should address today or before we go to KCWA's rebuttal case?
I have just a question, and it's
Yes,
just
please,
a
Mr.
process
Kennedy.
question.
Sure.
We did not need to, North Kern did not need to have any witnesses. We do have rebuttal documents. I just want to make sure that I've got my schedule correct as to when I will move those. I'm prepared to do it now. I'm prepared to do it tomorrow, but I want to know what you would prefer.
Well, why don't we do it? We'll use our time. Let's do it now. If you're prepared to do it, I don't see a reason not to. And then my plan will be to break for the day, and we will come back in the morning and start with Mr. Young. So, Mr. Cooney, at this time, are you prepared to offer North Kern's rebuttal exhibits into the evidentiary record? And would you please identify those exhibits for me, just by number?
Yes, and so these are all identified as North Kern exhibits 160 through and including 170.
Thank you. And then are there any objections to that I have not already addressed to the acceptance of North Kern exhibits 160 through 170 into the evidentiary record for phase 1B? So with that, I'll accept North Kern's exhibits 160 through 170 into the evidentiary record for phase 1B.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. So I plan to break early and reconvene tomorrow at 9 o'clock and start with Mr. Young. Is there anything else we should discuss before we break for the day? This is the last call. All right, well, thank you again. I want to thank all of you for your efficiency and coordination in working through this and making each of our days run very smoothly. I appreciate it, and I will see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you.